Welcome everybody. I welcome Dan Buhler from UNetwork today, and we are going to talk with him about applications, Slack, Teams, why actually our people are not leveraging tools we are purchasing, why they are abandoning the tools, and we get this feedback all the time. Oh, we tried Teams, but it didn't work out. Dan, welcome to you, and thanks. I'm really passionate about that. Why do you see this is a problem, Dan? Why you are so passionate about solving this problem?
Thanks, Danish. Well, internally here, we utilize a lot of technology as a tech company, and we see the incredible value that it brings to us. So we see that missing from many other businesses out there. So we're really excited to bring that tech and leadership to our clients. But when it doesn't work, we're a little bit disappointed because we want our clients to see the same kind of improvements that we did.
And why, what's the reason, or what's the real problem behind that? Like, purchasing an application now is really easy. There are many really great applications, easy to install, don't even need to install. Like, why do you see still a problem? Is it like, it seems to be like, now it's like getting easier to use those tools?
Yeah, so it turns out it's a lot harder to implement even applications that appear simple than it looks. So there's a lot of reasons why it may not work, but there's a couple key ones that I hope we can discuss today.
Yeah, it's like I give you like an insight. Like I was surprised. Like we implemented Slack in internal the other like a year ago or something, because my hope was like I get tons of emails. Like, no, I don't want to get like these like bombarded with emails, because
right,
he was like sending me emails all the time, right? And I said like, no, use something like Slack, do internal chat. That's easier, and that I'm not going to get that many emails and whatnot. But it didn't have. Like we get like now. I have to monitor Slack. I have emails, and now, I mean, like we were totally confused. We get a new tool with a new hope, and we started not using that because it was just too much. Like that's one of these problems. Then you want to cover, because that's another way, not just not using the tool, but being overwhelmed with like dead by apps. Too many.
Yeah, in many cases, it just adds a new problem that we need to solve.
All right, so let's hammer. What do you think are the main reasons of these type of problems? I mean, the original problem, what we see is that applications are available, easy to use, cheap, and these are installed, but really rarely used.
Exactly. So the first one is, in some ways, it's a little bit of a resistance to change. So unless everybody immediately sees an advantage to learning a new way of doing something, there's going to be a resistance to the process. We can't just say, here's a new tool, here's why you should use it, and expect everybody to just jump on board immediately. There has to be a compelling reason for enough people in the organization to switch to a new way of doing it, even if it's not necessarily a complicated system.
It's interesting you're saying that, because like usually these type of tools we are talking about, like Microsoft Teams, Slack, collaboration, like honestly it's just like I'm typing and clicking enter, that's it, right? It's super simple. Like what is the why people can't type and click enter and use it? Like it's not difficult, right? What change they need to make?
It's not a new accounting software. It's not a new contact management or sales system. It's really just text and audio chat, the same thing that we do all day long in other tools. So first, it's that we haven't often identified enough reasons to change. And the reason we haven't done that is there needs to be a champion of the system that we work with to develop these use cases within the organization.
So it's interesting because like going back to the Slack example, like many of our colleagues kept sending me emails. But
Yeah.
we thought like, no, like internal now, we're not using email anymore. But
Yeah.
somehow you're right. It was like easier for them to keep what they've been doing before rather than make any change. And what was the reason for that? Because it's like even like an application like you're saying, it's super simple. Like people have thousands of reasons not to implement, not to change, right?
Yeah. So part of that is there's no structure, no defined structure around how a tool is to be used. You can't just put the tool out there, explain and train how to use it and expect them to start using it. There needs to be a structure around when we're talking about collaboration software to actually be specific about what types of collaboration go into what tool. So when you need to ask somebody about lunch or schedule a meeting, it needs to be written down. Should that be a private message on one of these platforms or should it be an email?
So you mean by that, like there are different communication channels, like I can call you, I can text you, I can Slack you, I can email you, I can meet with you. Like there are many different ways to communicate, and you're advocating that those type of typical messages should be like kind of decided, like, okay, like this type of things is going to be decided on a meeting. No, you're not going to put it on Slack. No, you put this in Slack because it's more urgent or something. So without this type of structure, it's like not going to be used at all, or just create confusion.
Exactly. So it just means it's another mess of data. And the whole purpose of using these tools is to consolidate all of the communication around projects and topics in one system. So we're not always trying to hop around to find the last bit of thread of a discussion or something going on to resume discussing it.
So it's interesting because like what so when we implement any application, that's usually a process around. So an application is usually like automating a current process or enables the organization to do something else. But basically, when I haven't thought honestly like that, actually collaboration or communication is actually a process we didn't write down, but probably should think about, because that's the problem, not the lack of ability to communicate, right? And how would you do that? So what would
Yes.
be your guess to like how an executive would start any of these things?
So usually we start by identifying an internal champion for us to work with.
Okay.
So somebody who's likely excited about learning new things and is respected within the organization. Somebody that when the time comes can get other people excited about the system and how it's improved them. So we work with that person to identify, at least starting with a very specific need. So it may be something like organizing all of the conversations around a specific client project. So instead of working with text messages while somebody may be on site at a project or talking with somebody else, or having email threads between various different parts of the company, and even documents that may span a lot of different areas, or they may be on a server or some other location. Bringing all of that together into one single pane, single window on your computer has a lot of value. So usually we start with a specific need similar to that.
So basically, this guy is an internal or external type people, because yeah, it's a good question. So this guy has to learn the tool. He's or she's the power user. She's like probably check the updates and things like that. So she's who choose the application, or she's just part of the implementation. Who, because this champion is really an interesting concept here, to somehow own the application or something like that.
Right. So internally here within our company, we have a spreadsheet of all the applications and tools and various things that we use. And one of the first column after the name of the application is who is the internal champion of this tool. So
Okay.
A champion of the tool means the person that the primary person that you go to when you have an issue with the tool. And they're also the person in charge of governance around the tool. So monitoring, in a way, compliance of using it. So if they see that maybe certain people are not using the tool in the correct way, that's something that can be brought up either with us or internally or with management to correct that or identify a problem and then work with us to resolve it.
That's really smart. Like, so in this case, the management can delegate the responsibility to actually adopt the tool, and
Yeah,
now that makes sense because it says like one somebody's like responsible for that, and it's kind of interesting then that like even like a simple tools like Teams or Slack has like a lot of stuff to set up, like channels and who is getting into the channel, what's the role of the channel. So it's more likely a kind of forum moderator where there are
yes,
many chat lets how to distribute that chat in different ways or who needs to like
right.
that makes sense because that's basically the guy who is how to say direct the different communication. It's
Yeah,
I haven't thought it, but it's really smart to actually put it in one hand.
yeah.
Wow, that's good. Okay, what's the second
Good.
thing we can do? Like, okay, identify like a specific user who is going to
Good.
own this whole thing.
Yeah, so we have a specific need and a champion internally to help do this. And with them, we create a small group of users to pilot this with. So it's important to have a mix of different people in there. Obviously, people that are excited to learn new things, because that can really help propel it initially. But then also working with people that can sometimes be a bit resistant to technology or don't want to necessarily change their process or don't see value in it, because those people can help identify the roadblocks early on in the process so we can find solutions to that before we try getting other people on board.
It's something like get your enemies closer kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because basically who is going to kill the project if you bring them onto this pilot program, they kind of
Precisely.
that they part. Oh, that's smart. That's really good.
Yeah. And then with that group, we start developing an actual process that's actually written down. Um, so instead of just talking about it and then walking away from a meeting, we actually start writing down the process of how this tool is going to be used within the organization. So we'll make a note of things like, hey, when you're uh, starting to work on a new project, the initial conversation is going to happen in this way. We're going to create a new channel for this project. We're going to invite everybody necessary into it. And we're going to write an opening message saying, this is the project, here's what we're doing in this discussion channel.
It's interesting. Like, wait a sec. It's like I'm just thinking about like our companies. Like we have like 7, 8 people remotely working, whatever, and like I think this is like for enterprise. Like, do you really think that we need to jot down those things even we are having a small company?
Yeah, so that's something I always struggled with too. I thought it was unnecessary in most cases, and it was just a complicated way to waste times with more meetings and more stuff that people have to
We
have
try
to
to do
remember and do.
shortcuts, right?
Yeah, um, yeah. But as time has gone on and as we've implemented more and more of this, we've realized that having systems and processes in every aspect of your business that's actually documented and agreed upon uh, makes everything that you do so much simpler.
Okay.
There's so much less friction. There's so much stress when doing these things because you know you're doing it the right way. You don't have to try to learn or reinvent the wheel every time somebody is starting a new thing.
No, it start making sense because you started that having a champion. So the champion is basically owning the whole application, then formulate
Yeah.
a team, a group with them, and probably the champion is leading the group. So I
Yeah.
guess the third one is the rules and processes, really just a one pager or some really easy thing can be led by the champion. And now that makes sense because actually the champion has the leadership role and has the process role. So somebody's actually making decisions. That's really smart because I was thinking that, it's in a big enterprise, somebody's like in a central do that, but no, it's part of the team, but somebody's actually
Yeah.
having a way to lead others. So if it's really
Right.
interesting because it's a current problem to us, and I try to just wrap my head around what I would do like tomorrow. Is I would assign this chat I know who in the organization and give them like really a one pager or something like that to write down the different principles and what we do, and he's going to announce if it's changing or no. It's just simple. I think you're right. We are over we are small companies think these are just for big companies, but no, it's what you are saying is it's just a really simple thing. So it's not like we need a no, it's really interesting, because somehow I feel that like we just neglect this kind of thing. We just jump into like an app, let's go, it's easy to
Well,
buy.
we think we're smarter than we are, I think.
Yeah, sometimes
We think we're capable of agreeing on something or discussing or remembering things a lot better than we actually are. So even if you're writing down these processes just for yourself, there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually really true. Good. So that was the first big part of the solution is the internal champion and the group and the process. What's the second big component of a successful implementation?
So after the pilot program has already found a need and worked with a small group for that and has built a small process, then the next step is training everybody else within the organization on that process.
Mm-hmm.
So that means getting all the applications set up completely. So for example, with Teams, not just having it available on their computer, but also making sure that it's turned on and installed on their phone. And then things like making sure the notifications are set up correctly, so they're not they don't feel inconvenienced by floods of notifications, and that they are getting the pop-ups and beeps that are important to them.
So yeah, it's interesting, like because the first part was basically the preparation, and now we are having something as more as an implementation, because it's really interesting to jump into something like Teams, like, hey, we're going to figure out. But I think what you're saying is so much more important to have the small group that kind of feel how is it going to work and make mistakes first and in a contained environment. So when the implementation starts, even like we have a 10 people company, like 2 or 3 people going to play with that for a month or so, and then it's going to be implemented for the rest of the 10, 15, 20, 100 people, but it's going to be battle tested beforehand.
Right.
It's interesting because again, like this implementation is not like 110 project checklist of something. It's just really common sense, but it's not common practice, right?
All this can be written down on a single piece of paper for the majority of companies.
So
it's not complicated.
The other thing is that can you elaborate on best practices on training and how to refine the process before we actually get into something like we can close the implementation process? Because I think that's another problem, is that we don't have this kind of graduation. Okay, when we say the implementation is done, like there is no like celebration or like, okay, what it's just like a fluid thing. We just happen to have Slack in our environment and everybody's kind of figuring out, right? So what do you see the implementation process can look like in a basic terms?
So the implementation, I'm not sure if it ever completely finishes. There's always an ongoing aspect to it. So usually that's the internal champion verifying the usage and compliancy of the tool and pointing out changes and listening to others who may have issues with it. So we, especially during the initial training process, we encourage and beg for people to complain.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's
So it's really important to find all those little things that just kind of bug people about the process so we can properly communicate or even potentially even fix those issues.
because that's not a noise, it's a signal something needs to be changed. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there are these naysayers all the time. No, it's like it's not going to work on this and that reason. But these guys are picking up the problems, and if you are listening, that not rejecting, no, 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 then actually we learn how to. Hey, oh, gee, like this. This is really like not. Yeah, I would need like a 10 checklist or something for this because it's really smart. I mean, it's just really a common sense for having an implementation successful. What did you learn more about these type of processes? So any other hints you have for like how to make sure the implementation is going to be successful?
Well, not too much. So the pilot program and then proper training and then just ongoing kind of maintenance and tending to the garden, whoever that person is are the main keys that we've found. Sometimes it can help to have multiple pilot programs as well. So you do a phase one or two, and usually by that time, other people are begging to be on the platform, and that's when you know you're kind of ready to start.
And give me some hints because when the initial process goes, the initial team is there, everybody knows why we did that, whatever. And then like a year goes by, new employees are coming, the old guys went away, and that's kind of we are using as is. It's a status quo, right? So any type of like rhythm you suggest, like every quarter, every month, review that, make sure the policies are updated and sent to everybody, or mandatory like have this general maintenance or something like that on the application. Is it beneficial or just overkilling this whole thing?
Definitely. So the cadence of that kind of thing is going to change based on the size of your company, how much turnover, how many new staff you're hiring, and especially needs review if anything changes with the role of the internal champion of those specific tools. And that's where having that process that you had documented built early on in this journey is helpful. Because when anything changes, you got a new employee or a new champion of it, you can refer back to that sheet. And it kind of gives you a reset or reminds you why you're doing all this. And then also gives you a chance to refresh those ideas too. So maybe not all of that is relevant anymore, and you can start communicating new reasons for using this.
Yeah, what is your take on that? I'm thinking on like Teams and Slack, and that specific thing is somehow I feel that the most of the problem I seen with our kind of implementations that these tools are never staying as itself. It's not like a little island. It's always connected in processes. It's connected into different other applications. And many times the projects are killed by either the process is not changing or the people are not changing with the process, or actually the integration interfaces are not set up well or something, and things are missing, the data is not coming, it's a cumbersome, and like it's just like these UI things. What do you think about like this is how you help on that part?
Yeah, so probably the good and bad of these tools is that they're infinitely flexible. So there's so many different ways that you can use it. And if everybody starts using it in different ways or ways that you didn't previously identify or know about, then it can kind of turn into a mess that everybody's a little bit unhappy about. So it just goes back to having that regular cadence of identifying areas that are outside of the original scope of what we were trying to accomplish, maybe adding those to the process, and then mostly just listening to others and working to work through those problems or find solutions to that.
It's good. So it's basically comes down to three major steps to wrapping this whole thing up. Is the proper preparation with a little pilot program and choosing the champion, then having an implementation process with training, but the training is based on some sort of process document. So the process first, application second. So that's the implementation part. Then after that, the internal champion is actually do certain things in a regular cadence, like educate people, check the updates, check the integrity, every other integrations updated, everybody's using that. Honestly, that's way simpler than what I was thinking. It's really, would you able to kind of wrap this whole thing up with your own words, like what was the real problem and actually how to solve it really quickly? Because I think the context is really important here for this.
Yeah, so we live in a wonderful time where we have so many options and applications, and IT has gotten easy to pick up and start using. You can get any type of hammer you want anywhere. But the main issues are we don't get a proper process in place before passing out that hammer to everybody in your organization. So yeah, just working with your IT provider and an internal champion to kind of establish the need, create a small group to run a pilot program with, to build that documented process. Nothing that needs to be complicated either, but then using that process to roll out the full implementation and then just maintaining the garden after that on an ongoing basis.
It's pretty good then, and thanks for sharing these thoughts. And guys, just you to know that we have implemented here as a digital transformation audit. So you're able to get your scores, and basically one of the 7 areas are applications, implementations, and success with that through your digital transformation. So I encourage everybody to take the benchmark. It's really simple to go through, and one of the advisors are helping along the way, and then is one of the advisors here. So it's really interesting what we've been learning with all these benchmarks, like how simple methods can actually help small and medium organizations to adopt technologies is just like crazy, right? So and again, thank you very much for your contribution here. I'm always learning here, and I have my to-dos to do with that, and I can't wait to try out this little 3-step process with our team. So thank you very much, Dan, again.
Yeah, thanks, Danish.